Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Late one spring night in 1966, the scent of mahua flowers dense in the air. Maharaja Praveer Chandra Bhanj Deo, his long dirty nails curling out of his fingers, an unkempt beard and hair running down to his waist, stepped out onto the steps of his run-down palace, into a hail of bullets. The blood of the last king of Bastar, local legend has it, mingled with that of hundreds or thousands of his loyal Adivasi supporters. Local police records of that encounter state that the 61 rounds they fired claimed 12 lives. Even today, some Bastar residents mark 25th of March as Balidan Divas, the day of sacrifice. To his father, the supremely eccentric Praveer Chandra had seemed, I quote, a young puppy spoilt by the British. Less constrained by paternal affection, maybe, Home Minister Govind Ballabh Pant described him as, I quote, erratic and whimsical, noting that in the estimation of many people, the king was, his words not mine, almost an idiot. A senior bureaucrat suggested that the king give up his yogic practices and instead, the great Indian solution, marry and live a decent family life. For the Adivasis of Bastar though, Praveer Chandra was a living god. A god who would lead them bow and arrow in hand to victory against a predatory world that threatened their survival. Last week, police announced the killing of 29 Maoists in an ambush in Kankar, the largest number ever claimed in a single firefight. To some Adivasis in Bastar though, the slain insurgents are heroes, inheritors of a tradition of desperate resistance against the annihilation facing their people. The Republic of India ends somewhere past the school, post office and the Mahalakshmi ice cream store. The earth track from the town of Bechaghat is interrupted by ditches and barriers, making it impossible for vehicles to traverse. The bridge the government has sought to build across the Kotari River remains just an idea because of resistance from the villagers it is intended to serve, as well, of course, as the risk to the life of any contractor who seeks to build it. Everywhere along the path to the dry hills leading to the site of last week's fighting, there are memorials to slain insurgents. The massacre of 22 police personnel in April 21 and 10 more last summer are to be celebrated as revenge, not to be mourned as they are elsewhere in the country. For many living in those hills, the story began in the year of the Bhumkal or earthquake, long before the birth of independent India. Early in 1910, the Adivasis of Bastar rose against the small British colonial force stationed in the remote kingdom, pillaging the bazaars, killing merchants, and attacking government offices. Tensions had been building up for more than 2 years among the Parja Adivasis living around Jagdalpur, the historian Hiralal Shukla has recorded, because they were being subjected to rape, looting, and extrajudicial killing. Led by a charismatic shaman known as Gunda Dhar, we don't know his real name, a loose network of village and town heads quietly prepared for war. Then, red chilies, mango leaves, and bows were circulated secretly as signals that the time for rebellion had come. The uprising would take the colonial state almost 6 months to put down. The political scientist Ajay Verghese has noted that the rebellion came amid seismic ruptures in the Adivasi world that were brought about by colonialism. Across India, pre-colonial rulers had established a complex set of customs to regulate their relationship with Adivasis. The rulers of Rajputana, for example, gave Bhil and Meena Adivasis a role in government, recognizing their status as the original inhabitants of the land. The Bakarwal of Kashmir, similarly, were made tax collectors. Following the defeat of the Maratha Empire in the Third Anglo-Maratha War of 1817-1819, though, states like Bastar became vassals of the East India Company. The colonial authority claimed ownership of the forests on its territories and deprived Adivasis of the right to use its produce as they wished. Traders and moneylenders from the plains began migrating into Bastar to capitalize on the new opportunities. Large numbers of rebellions, the historian Ranajit Guha recorded in a famous essay, exploded across the Adivasi lands. On scales, he writes, ranging from local riots to campaigns spread over many districts. The Santals in 1855, the Naikdas in 1868, the Kolis in 1873, the Birsas in 1895. The rebellions went on and on. The Raja of Bastar, sociologist Nandini Sundar has written, was among the many rulers faced with the wrath of his subjects during this period. In 1876, the Raja was intercepted as he headed out to meet Edward Albert, then the Prince of Wales, on his visit to India. The Adivasis complained about being forced to work without payment for petty officials and being made to supply them with free goods. They also protested the harsh new colonial penal laws as well as extortionate taxes. Following a brief skirmish when the Adivasis threw clods of earth and ritually polluting cow bones at their ruler, the king ordered his soldiers to open fire. 2 people were killed and a month-long siege of the king followed, which was only resolved after the British arranged for the sacking of 2 particularly despised officials of the royal court. The Pax Britannica is so firmly established, the imperial civil servant B.P. Standen wrote, on the eve of the 1910 uprising, that the idea of overt rebellion is always distant from our minds, even in a remote state like Bastar. 100 years later, in April 2010, 76 CRPF personnel were massacred by insurgents near the village of Chintalnar. From 2007, Maoists who had fled from Telangana began embedding themselves in Bastar. Extortion targeting businesses like SR as well as killings rose to levels that the government could not ignore. Learning nothing from the colonial rebellions, independent India intensified the imperial policies that had bankrupted the Adivasis. The post-colonial state, historian Ramchandra Guha tells us, I quote, further strengthened the organizing principles of colonial forest administration, the assertion of state monopoly right and exclusion of forest communities. Following independence, Praveer Chandra was declared insane and dispossessed of his properties. The insanity was not, it seems, so severe as to prevent the Congress from recruiting him as a candidate in the 1957 elections. The party, however, refused to restore his properties and the alliance soon fell apart. In 1967, the central government removed Praveer Chandra from his home. 13 protesters were killed in the violence that followed after Adivasis mistakenly besieged the jail where they thought he was held. The king's own party and his non-political front organizations rapidly grew in popularity. In 1965-1966, when India faced a food crisis, Bastar residents were subjected to forced levies on their grains. Local people demanded the restoration of Praveer Chandra to the throne, Nandini Sundar writes, believing that the government was not to be trusted, and if the grain was collected and given to the king instead, he would redistribute it among the poor. The killing of Praveer Chandra marked the end of the first major rebellion in Bastar. But soon after, another became visible. From 2005, the Communist Party of India, Maoist, became a new tool for Adivasi resistance to express itself. Seduced by then fashionable clear, hold and build counterinsurgency, which was being implemented by the Americans in Afghanistan and elsewhere, Home Minister P. Chidambaram responded by pumping in 14 battalions of the CRPF and another 5 of the Border Security Force into the Dandakaranya region. Then Home Secretary G.K. Pillai announced that, and I quote, within 30 days of security forces moving in and dominating the area, we should be able to restore civil administration. Like their colonial predecessors, though, the security studies scholar Ajay Sahni has noted, the Indian state and security forces slowly learned their lessons. The skills and numbers of police forces in Bastar were expanded and logistics developed. The Telangana and Andhra Pradesh police, in particular, succeeded in infiltrating the insurgent leadership and eliminating top commanders. The Maoist insurgency has indeed been wiped out from its heartlands in Telangana and seems in terminal decline across much of the country. But in the Adivasi territories of Dandakaranya, that's the great swathe of forest running from Abujmar to the eastern Ghats, it is stubbornly refusing to die. Large numbers of Adivasis in Bastar aren't persuaded that fighting the modern world is a battle that can be won or is even desirable. The modest gains of a bridge or a school, the income from public works, basic health and vaccination all seem better than nothing at all. Those who voice such beliefs, though, risk savage punishment in so-called people's courts. Enemies of the so-called revolution have been forced to flee their homes or face execution. The state's often indiscriminate violence, though, has undermined India's cause. No one has yet been punished for the execution of 17 children, women and men, not one of them Maoists according to a judicial investigation, who were killed in cold blood by the Chhattisgarh police in 2012. For many among a prospectless generation of young Adivasis, moreover, the promise of progress is becoming increasingly meaningless. The leader of the squad eliminated last week, Telangana resident Shripalli Shankar Rao, had left school after the 6th grade and had little to look forward to. Lalita Gotta, killed with him, and his key lieutenant, was also a school dropout. For all the promises of restoring administration and ending Adivasi poverty, Bastar remains among the poorest regions in the country. Following the dramatic expansion of the Maoist insurgency early in the millennium, mathematician and civil rights activist Kandala Balagopal noticed that the young people who joined the movement were, I quote, more attracted by its weapons than its politics. Leaders often tell us that Maoists are seducing so-called misguided youth. Perhaps the misguided youth are the smart ones, securing their own empires of mud from the Maoists. Even though the encounter has all but wiped out the insurgents operating in Partapur, one of the 4 section-sized Maoist squads of Northern Bastar, the gap will almost certainly soon be filled up. To address the problem, India needs to do something infinitely more difficult than killing Maoists. It needs to start giving Adivasis some justice. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm a contributing editor at ThePrint. Thank you for watching Security Code.